Hello and welcome to the MSU Japanese Pop Culture and Transmedia Workshop Translators Roundtable. I'm really glad to have everybody here. This is some of the folks we had who were presenters for this year's workshop at MSU, and we're very excited to have them for a final roundup of their thoughts and your thoughts. When we're done today, for those of you who are registered for the workshop, we will be returning one last time on March 15th for the rescheduled week 3. This workshop will be recorded. If you do not wish to be included, please turn off your camera, change your username so that it does not identify you. All recordings for this roundtable will be available on D2L and also on my channel on YouTube later on. During the session, you are invited to share your thoughts and responses in the chat to keep our conversation cordial, constructive, and inclusive. Just try to be a decent person is all we're asking, and we will be monitoring the chat. If you have questions for our participants and presenters, please use the chat. And if we have time at the end of this discussion, we'll do our best to get in as many answers as we can. There is a Discord channel for this workshop, and we invite you on the into the ongoing conversation before and after all of our weekly presentations, and even after this roundtable and the workshop is completed. I will be putting the link into the chat, and I'll post it again later as we go on. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, presenters, hello, thank you, and welcome for joining us today. What we have is, why don't you all wave, those of you who are our presenters, so these, you know who our presenters are. I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves, since we are on outside the workshop environment. And also, I would like you to please give me a short summary of your presentation. And if you have time and you have a bonus thought, what was the main point of your presentation that you hope people would take away from it? And we're going to start with Zack.
Zack, you mute on there.
I know. I was gonna say, now I have to come off mute all of a sudden. I wasn't expecting to be first. So hey everyone, I'm Zack Davisson. Let's see, short summary myself. I am awesome. Yay! There's my short summary. No, I am a translator and writer. I've been working in the industry for quite a while now. Started out mostly translating Mizuki Shigeru's work. I also translate stuff like Matsumoto Leiji, Satoshi Kon, Go Nagai, basically all the old stuff. The old guy does the old stuff, so no big surprises there, right? Anyways, my presentation was really on the realistic aspects of working in translation. Like, what does it really mean to be a working translator? And, you know, sort of, I guess, a little bit disillusioning the fantasy that I once had, that many people once had, that I would get a job in manga and it would be highly lucrative and I would just be working in manga all day and it would just be wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And that's not true. So I just tried to sort of like give people some different options of what you could do with language skills, how those are transferable to different careers, how you can find yourself working, doing translation in some place like Amazon or something like Microsoft or something like, you know, a big corporation. That there are many avenues that you can take these skills to that will provide you a more secure foundation than actually just doing the awesome fun part, which is of course doing game and manga and translation. So that was really my presentation in a nutshell.
Great. Super, thank you very much. Jennifer Sherman, would you please intro yourself and give us an idea of your presentation and what your main takeaway, what things you wanted to be a main takeaway from your presentation?
Yeah, I am Jennifer Sherman. I'm an editor for Square Enix manga and books. So I edit big books like this, like the game tie-in books, as well as, I want to show you the wrong thing, as well as manga and like light novels. And I was previously a participant in this workshop, I want to point that out. But this year I presented on challenges broadly in the Japanese pop culture localization industry, but especially in the manga and light novel publishing sphere that I work in. I wanted to highlight some of the challenges that both freelancers and in-house workers have, and some ways to overcome those challenges we have today, because working in entertainment and passion industries can be quite challenging in some ways, but it also can be a great rewarding field to be in, and has some of the most wonderful people who are part of this great community that we're in. That's really what I wanted to be a big takeaway, that there are a lot of challenges, and this is not necessarily for everyone, but this really is a wonderful group of people to be part of, and I really believe in the work that we do in this industry. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. So David, Evelyn, why don't you tell us about yourself and your presentation?
Sure. My name is David Evelyn. I'm a manga translator. I'm an overall translator, but I mostly focus on manga. My presentation was basically just giving you a brief overview of like what's called the simulpub process, which is a simultaneous publication of Japanese serialized manga, like in Shonen Jump. So you know, just basically I wanted to get you guys, because it's not a very well-known process. It's like a very tedious process. It's not very, it can change and it can fluctuate, and there's all sorts of factors that kind of, you know, change on the fly. And you know, translating something week to week is a little bit different from translating completed something, like a completed volume of something. So wanted to give you the, you know, the kind of rundown on that. And you know, if you come up to something that you don't quite have, some, you know, it's, you know, something that's very challenging that you have to kind of do on the fly, that's just like one of the things that you have to do. You know, basic takeaway is I just wanted to get people to know that, you know, this kind of stuff is how people can enjoy this relatively new kind of strange way of you know, giving media to people week by week, you know, just from, you know, Japan to America, like within the span of a week, and you know, the next week and the week after that. So, and it's something that a lot of people just kind of don't think about because they're so used to just having the thing in their hand. But you know, there's a lot of man work, a lot of work that goes into it, and you know, the basic takeaway is like I just wanted you guys to know like what I go through, the pain and suffering, and somewhat, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I hope you guys, if you guys were there to enjoy it, I hope you guys enjoyed it. So
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it was a great presentation. So Jennifer, Jennifer O'Donnell, would you jump
The
in
other
here?
Jennifer.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jennifer O'Donnell. I'm a translator and localization director at Capcom. I did a presentation on how you can self-edit your work, you know, things to look out for, techniques you can use and tools that you can utilize in your process. Kind of hoping that everybody understood the importance of editing, because I remember when I started translating, I was like, oh, the editor will edit this, that's their job. And I learned, no, I have to edit myself, and it definitely makes for an overall better quality translation. And so I'm hoping that people will not make the mistake I did. And sort of, especially because as a project manager and a lead translator, it's nothing more disappointing than reading a translation that clearly hasn't been edited, and you're like, ow, like why? So yeah, so I hope that people took away at least a couple of different things that they found useful, that they could implement in their own, you know, work, whether it is translation or writing or whatever.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. And Kevin, you have not yet in the real world presented, but you're going to talk about it as if you have. Because of the timing, the rescheduling this year. Would you give us an idea of who you are and what your great presentation will have been in a few weeks?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Ishizaka. I'm a translator that primarily works on light novels. I do a variety of stuff, including a lyric translation, which is interesting because someone else did a presentation on music lyrics. Yeah. Anyway, my presentation will be covering kind of a lot of ground, just a general look at different fields of translation and how you kind of gotta change your you kind of gotta change your style sometimes to match the expectations in different fields and kind of specialize a little bit, because I think when people start out learning translation, they learn Japanese and they learn how to change Japanese to English, but they look at it in a vacuum, like, okay, this is what I would do if I wanted to translate this, but they don't think about how this will how you might need specific skills for, like, if you want to work in manga, you need to know how to work with it within the confines of the dialogue boxes. So, you know, you're not like having cut off sentences in the middle of weird places, whatnot. If you want to work in video games, you got to be able to translate game text really well. And that involves a surprising amount of research. Like, you got to go back and look at the old games and like the old phrasings, the clause structure and all that. So yeah, just covering some stuff that is very specific and kind of a yeah, just a broad look at stuff.
So like a sort of medium specific.
Right.
The translation will be. That's going to be fascinating. I can't wait to hear that. So thank you all, and thank you all for being here tonight as well. So what I want to know, for those of you who, and I'm going to ask you to just sort of raise your hand and answer, I think. For those of you who've been to some of the other presentations, has there been anything that you personally have taken away from any of the other presentations that you've watched? Does anybody want to answer that? Because you're all professionals in the field, and I know that, like Jennifer said, you know, Jennifer Sherman was here as a participant at first. And I know many of you have been at other people's presentations. I was wondering if anybody had thoughts. David, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say from Jennifer Sherman. I forgot there's two. The whole thing about self-care is very resonant to me, because I, you know, when I first started, I was like very just gung-ho, like, I don't care if I sleep, I'll eat sleep for dinner or whatever kind of like thing. And, you know, it just, after the first 2 or 3 years, it just got really like bad, and I needed to, you know, keep better care of myself. I needed to, like, you know if I'm tired, I need to go to sleep, or, you know, I needed like people to in my field to talk to about, like, you know, oh God, I'm like swamped or blah blah blah. It just makes it that much better in general to like exist when you have like a better schedule and you have people to talk to and stuff like that, because it can get really, you know, kind of like lonely, and you know, you kind of feel like you're all alone on an island by yourself, kind of thing. So
I think one of the things that this whole workshop has brought to the translation conversation is mentors. You folks have all really stepped up in the Discord, also on Twitter and other online platforms. You've really stepped up and all been very loud and proud about, hey, folks, here's what you need to do for yourself, you know, and not just about negotiating or, you know, do you want to be an LLC, which is the conversation we had in the Discord this afternoon, but how do you take care of yourself? How do you set appropriate boundaries? And I think having elders in the industry, and that's what, to some extent, you're all the elders, right? You're standing up and going, look, I'm telling you, yes, you want to work here, but also have good boundaries, right? And I think that's really, really critical. Does anybody else have any good takeaways they had from other people's presentations? Yes, Jennifer Sherman.
Well, I learned something from, you know, everybody's presentation so far, of course, but I guess I would mention Katrina's presentation, because she went in a different direction than a lot of us went. I think she went very technical, talking about translation theory and putting names to all of these things that normally, like, you know, we make all these types of translation decisions every day, but we don't think about, like, you know, what is actually happening there, or, you know, what the label of this type of thing is called. And it's interesting to look at it in a more technical way. So that was really cool.
I found her presentation to be incredibly not just insightful, but also very, very understandable. Like, even though she was talking about translation theory, which immediately sounds very academic, it was totally understandable. And,
Good.
and I found that really, really good. Jennifer O'Donnell or Zach, do you have any thoughts? Kevin? Anything?
Yeah, I wasn't able to attend the other talks, unfortunately, but I was planning on watching all the videos. But I really liked David's look into kind of the back end of simulpubbing, because I mean, I've done freelance manga translation, but not being able to go, hey, I learned this down the line, so we should probably tweak it for like for like the official release. And so it was really interesting hearing like a different side of something I thought I was familiar with, but learning something new.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm the
also
same.
the perspective of the puzzles, trying to deal with things on
Yeah.
the fly. Like, we think about it as we're reading this manga, we're like, wow, that was really clever, but somebody's back there going like, we got to get that out tomorrow. That was pretty amazing. Zach, you were
Yeah,
saying?
I just guess I'm the same that I wasn't able to attend the other presentations, but I hope to watch them. But I certainly got a lot of takeaway from the conversations that have been happening on the Discord. And I think that's been just really great, having everyone really involved in there and hearing all the different opinions and, some of the parts that I don't know very much about. That's been great.
And I also found your talk about ways of thinking outside the box in translation really, really eye-opening. That people tend to think like, I'm going to be a manga translator, and like there's so many other ways. And when you talk to, it's the parent conversation, right? I'm a translator, like they don't know what that means, right? And then you start going, well, they look at it and they go, well, there's legal translation, and you're like, but there are all sorts of other things too that I could be doing with this. We've all had, I'm sure, a conversation with the parents who still don't know what any of us do at all whatsoever. And the thing is, it's, translation is part of a growing global economy and a global culture, not just of manga and anime, but just pop culture in general. I mean, we have people you've got people who are fans of K-pop in Japan and America and touring in Europe, and that sort of stuff involves lots of translation and lots of cultural exchange. And I thought that was really very interesting that you were saying, hey, there's other ways that you might be using this in both the corporate world and in the pop culture world. So it was really cool.
And they pay better.
And they pay better, which absolutely is why I have a day job. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to the next one. For those of you who have presented, you've also received some feedback from the folks who've watched your presentations. Did any of you get any feedback that made you think a little bit? People have been pretty good about providing feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in there. I thought the feedback was, at least the stuff for my presentation, it was really, I didn't realize that what I had to say was going to be such a surprise. And I forget that it's because I'm looking at it from a fairly long career. And so I'm a lot more practical about things than people who are just, maybe in college or just starting out and a little bit starry-eyed. And there's a big difference between having the long view, which I didn't really realize was what I was bringing, but it is in fact what I'm bringing, And so that was interesting to see, just sort of like, oh, that's right. A lot of people are going into this, stars in your eyes, getting really excited about it. And then I kind of give them the bummer speech. But I think it's sometimes something you need to hear.
To some extent, I think a number of, I don't want to say that it's a bummer speech, but a number of the presentations were like, and now, whoa, Nelly, here's the stand still and think about it, sort of reimagine what you're thinking it's going to be. And I saw a lot of feedback that was really appreciative of everybody's whoa, Nelly moment, the Jennifer Sherman saying, take care of yourself, Jennifer O'Donnell, are you teaching people how to edit yourself? And that's the kind of thing that people aren't thinking about. Like, okay, I'm translating, I'm cranking, and then you have like, wait, does it actually make sense for the thing I'm doing? And I'm sure Kevin's going to be talking a little bit about that as well. Like, does this make sense for the thing I'm doing? But all of you, to some extent, really talked about how to get your feet solid on the ground and not be swept away, which I think a lot of the feedback was very, very appreciative of.
And I think also just the idea that translation skills alone don't give you a career in translation. So much of it is networking, so much of it is being able to present and sell and market yourself. And you can be the world's greatest translator. And if you are an awful human being that nobody wants to work with, it really doesn't matter.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just even who you know. It's really how you know people, like how just hanging out on the Discord. We've met so many interesting people. I'm sure if one of them was saying, I'm now open for looking for a job, you folks are going to say, hey, you know what, I might even know a opportunity. And we have professional translators sharing all the time opportunities on that Discord where people are saying, hey, here's a company looking to hire. And we're sharing it with a group of people that we know are really dedicated and interested and also willing to talk about stuff. And that's important stuff,
Yeah. I was literally just at Emerald City Comic Con this week and got 3 new jobs passed on to me by people who had someone ask them, do you know a guy? And they're like, yeah, I know a guy. And that guy is Zack Davisson. And
Right.
I've never met these people, but through this networking, that's how jobs get passed over to you, which is really nice.
And I mean, it seems unfair to say that the cons are the place to go, but to be realistic, it's like having a microphone for podcasting or a camera for Zooming. It's part of the work. It is. Being in the places where people are having the conversations is part of the work.
I think one really important thing as well is that it's not I need to know this famous person because they'll get me a job.
No,
I think you need to network with the people who are around you, because I'm pretty sure me, David, Jennifer, and Kevin all started at pretty similar times in our career. Or at least I think David might have gone in before me.
I might have been a little bit further back, maybe
I
like
feel like I'm the
Yeah.
newest here.
I think you might be, yeah.
But
But like
2 years.
I feel like we met each other at very similar times, and we were all just kind of grew up together and maintained that network, even if it's not like we're hanging out every single weekend, but we're at least like see each other in the corridor and be like, hey.
Well, I can tell you this much. I got my job with Viz because the person who is now like the marketing, he's not marketing, he's licensing and acquisitions. He was my friend from like my V bulletin board days, like from like 2003 or something like that.
Right.
And I just knew him, and he happened to be in that position. He wanted to get me in, and that's basically how I got.
I mean, there's a certain amount of luck, right? I mean,
Yeah,
let's
it's
face
luck.
it,
Sometimes it's luck.
we can't understate the fact that there is a certain amount of luck that is involved in being in the right place at the right time with the right person.
Exactly.
That's
So
why it helps to make connections with like everybody in the Discord group and all the people that you meet, because even if they're not there now, like you never know what's going to happen down the line.
That's right.
The longer you're in it too, the more connections you can make, and you'd be surprised like what little thing will eventually lead to something else. Both of my in-house jobs that I've had so far have been basically, I knew somebody very, kind of loosely in there, and they helped me apply through the right place so that I would get humanized on my application. So, it's not necessarily someone directly getting you a job either. It's just somebody giving you that extra little push.
And honestly, that's part of what's happening on the Discord now. One of the job offerings that we listed there was somebody I know through somebody else who said, hey, we're looking for translators. And I said, well, I have this Discord. And she said, well, would you please share this? And apparently I have been told that, some of the folks on the Discord who did apply to that have at least were in consideration. I don't know the eventual fallout of that, but I know that they were saying, yeah, we did get some applications through that. So it's a resource. It's an important resource. And that's why I'm keeping it going even past the workshop, because conversation is good, and it's anything where you can form a network is a valuable tool. Okay, great. Okay, so hang on a second. I'm just jotting down your questions here, Laura. But
yeah, I was gonna say, do we want to answer some of the questions that are coming up?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions here. Let's do this first one. So Laura had a first one that I want to. This is for David. Speaking of which, Goku Rakugai dropped since your presentation.
Oh yeah.
How does it work when a series is starting out and several chapters release all at once? Is it still a chapter a week, but they hold them up until they release all at once?
So like this happened again. This happened before with Kaiju number 8, where they just they were behind with because usually they like to do these series so that they launch at the same time, so there's no backlog. But like sometimes when it's like one of these series like that's in Jump Plus or Jump Square, they sometimes are a little lagging behind because they don't know if it'll be a thing that they want to do. So in that case, you know, they will let a backlog build up so that we can just have like a bunch of stuff to do and then just throw it out there all at once, and then we get caught up. And in this case, it was just basically, okay, there's 6 chapters, there's 5, well, technically there was like 6 chapters and a 7th one coming. So they were just like, okay, you have from January till whenever it launched, was it March, I think, like last week? And yeah, so we just had that much time, and it was a lot easier this time because the launch date wasn't so like close, because with Kaiju number 8, it was like, you have literally a month to do all like a whole volume of manga, or not even a month, it was like 2 weeks. So I was like, yeah, just do it. And that's what you had to do. But now that all of them are out, now we can start like being one-to-one with Japan. There are some series that don't catch up one-to-one. I think there's like one that actually released right in the middle, and they like are doing the backlog, even though now it's done. Like the series is done, but they're still catching up on the backlog and stuff.
I did a series like that.
I think it was like Kubo. Yeah. That's
yeah,
it.
that was.
It ended.
I was editing that, and
oh yeah, that's
like
right.
they had several volumes out before it went into Shonen Jump App.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Like trying to build a backlog of like 10 chapters before actually launching the simul chapter, which was like 70 something when it launched, which was weird.
Yeah, that's what happens when you license Jump Plus or Jump, anything that's not in the main magazine. It's like,
Right, and they're always making extra jumps too.
Yeah.
So you know, so it's just like little teeny jumps, G jumps, and whatever. Yeah.
yeah, Tonali
Yeah, like that. They even had a Yuri anthology called Yuri Torta Jump, which was it was a pun that didn't work in Japanese or English, which was great.
yeah, there you go.
So let me see what we have. We have another one from Laura, and I think this is actually a valuable question. I think there's actually an answer to it. So Laura wants to know, how do you know which cons to attend? Because we're talking about the value of cons or events. So go ahead, Zach.
The only cons that are really going to be valuable are the ones where the publishers are. Because the publishers are the ones who hire you. Right now, if you could put all your eggs in one basket, it would be Anime NYC, without a doubt. That is where all the publishers are. All the publishers are in New York, and so that's the con that they all go to. There are other like little local cons. Like you're not. I mean, it's valuable to attend those local cons because you can do things like give yourself experience. You know, you can start building sort of like your presence and everything like that. But you're not really going to have good networking opportunity there. You need to figure out to those ones and this is also the key thing when it comes to networking, getting jobs. The only people who matter really are the editors, right? You can be best friends with every translator that has ever lived, and none of us can hire you. Absolutely none of us. So, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, networking with editors and finding out what those, you know, where the publishers are going to be. And I would say Anime, and if you want, Anime NYC is #1.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Yes, Jennifer O'Donnell.
Yeah, I attended a lot of conventions in the UK and the US. I'd honestly say any ones that you want to go to, like, yeah, you can network and get in with the publishers, but also, like we were saying, making friends with colleagues, meeting people. I remember LA Anime Expo was really great for meeting like loads of different people in the industry, like meeting people I'd met online in person and be like, oh, you're going to this thing, let's meet up, let's like get dinner or something. And yeah, I think really pretty much any convention is going to be good if you know there are people in the industry and you know them online and you haven't met them before, and they can introduce you to other people, and so you can build like your network of friend colleagues that way as well. Like it's not necessarily going to get you a job.
Editor, it's true that the translator can't get you the job, but you know what? As a freelance editor, sometimes I do get work directly from translators. Like I just worked on something, not in anime manga, not in that sort of pop culture. It was a separate thing, but the translator reached out to me and she has a job, so was like, hey, do you want to do some editing? I'm like, sure, I've got time. And so I did something else. And so you just never know when the connections you're making are going to be really valuable, because we don't make connections for the value
Yeah.
that they are to us, right? We make connections because we like each other. We want to talk and make friends and have, we don't look at people and go, well, you're not valuable to me,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to be
Yeah.
your friend. We think, oh, hey, I know Jennifer Sherman. Yeah, what, she'd be really good if you're looking for blah, 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 and that's how you make connections. It's not about, it's not transactional, right? None of this should be transactional. It's about making friends and connections.
I was gonna say, Jennifer, you made such a great point too, is that you don't necessarily have to wait for conventions. Like, I met Jennifer because we went out to lunch,
Yeah.
because we're like, hey, a bunch of translators live in Seattle. Why don't we all go out to lunch together? And that's how I met you. I met
Community of
Michelle,
interest.
I met Molly, so like, you don't necessarily have to wait for conventions. Just
Right.
figure
I
out
think
who your
that's part of
community is where
building
you
a
are.
community too. It's a
Mm.
community of interest. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like if anybody's in Osaka, there's a group that's starting up again now that COVID's calming down. And so if anyone's interested, I can connect them with that Osaka group. Like, yeah,
Excellent.
there's always like little pockets of
Yeah,
local things
absolutely.
going on.
Well, it really has to do
Great
with
point.
the town and the people. I mean, you'll find that with the mangaka too. Like they're doing the exact same thing on their side, right? Nothing is different on the Japanese mangaka side. It's so they're all getting together. There's I remember when a particular light novel came out, and all of a sudden they're all talking about it on Twitter, and suddenly you're hearing them talking to each other, and you're thinking, right, because where they all met each other was at Komiket. They all sat in the same section.
Right.
And they're all
Yeah.
BSing, and then they went and did Komithi, and then they went back and did Komiket again, and all these other ones. So what's happening is, of course, they have developed their own networks and circles, and that's, and then they say, hey, you're looking for an opportunity, so-and-so is hiring. It's the same exact thing on their side. So
Mhm.
there's a couple of people in the chat, Jennifer O'Donnell, that are interested in the Osaka group. So if you want to take a look over there.
Yeah, I'll post it in Discord.
Super, thank you. Steph Berger has a question. For those on the editing side, are there different things you'd recommend to prepare for an editing career versus translating, or is there a lot of overlap between the two?
Go ahead, Sharon.
Jennifer Sherman?
I don't know how to answer it, because there are a lot of things the same. Like a lot of what I do is still like translation myself, even though I'm not, translator is not my job title. So there's certainly a lot of overlap, especially, if you're at a publisher that requires the editor to know Japanese, then there's even more overlap there.
And they
But
should.
yeah, I mean, you do have separate skills, of course, but it's all, the word stuff, and the better you get at general word stuff, the better you'll be at any of these things. So,
Which is another point that I think a number of you made, particularly Zach, about how being a good writer is another skill that really is so critical. But as an editor, I would say I think it really is important to be able to be, I'm not translator qualified, I'm not a professional translator, and I will never be a professional translator, but if you hand me Japanese, I can understand what's going on, and that's important as an editor. So when I look at the content in English, I can go, whoa, we go way off base here. And that is a thing that has happened, where the translation and the words, not that they were wrong per se, but they were wrong for that medium or wrong for that material. And I think it is important that there's a lot of overlap. And it goes back to what Zach's talking about too, that there's more ways of doing this than one way.
Yeah.
Um,
I've had to edit a few times too.
Yep.
And like, I would say that it's important, like you said, it's important to have like a background in Japanese, because you can only do so much with what you're supposed to be editing if you only know English, and you only know even if you have like a little tiny bit of Japanese knowledge, it helps.
Mhm.
Because like you're going to be looking at things, like you said, are just way off base, or just totally like they'll have the right meaning from a dictionary, but like it's not the right meaning. Like
It's not the right thing for that.
it'll be a totally different kind of context.
Right.
And if you can catch that kind of stuff, that's great, because that makes everyone's life a lot easier. And I've done that, where I've had to like edit some people's work, and I'd had to tell them just like, hey, this is like not exactly wrong, you
But
know,
it ain't
but
right.
we can massage it until it is right. So,
Right,
you know.
exactly. And Jennifer O'Donnell says she's posted the link on the Discord. So excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Okay, so I have a totally off the base question, not really about you personally here, and I'd like any one of you to answer this. What do you think is the main value of this workshop? What do you think this workshop brings to the world? Yes,
I can
Jennifer.
go for that because I think honestly, education, like it. God, I remember when I started, like the number of resources from professionals and how to do this, that they were there, but they were all like for. I remember attending a workshop how to make 3-figure sum as a translator, and it was things like business documents and shedding yourself in more lucrative directions. And so there really wasn't this entertainment industry knowledge available, and I think this is really a good way to kind of share experience with people. Very much the don't make the same mistake I did, even though we all know everyone's going to make the mistakes anyway. And just I think it's just been really heartwarming to see people take away the things that I wish I had done differently, and I'm hoping that they can then do it differently.
Yeah, speaking of, you have a website with really good sources and advice for aspiring translators. Is it right if we share that in chat right now?
Yeah, I think most people probably know about it because, like I said, I didn't have that knowledge when I was joining, like entering the industry, and so I'm like, right, I'm going to take everything I've learned and put it somewhere so other people can
it's
get that
amazing
knowledge.
Actually,
website. It's a real resource.
Yeah.
The part of it is that this industry is very young and rapidly changing. I mean, even the fact that like simulpubs didn't exist a few years ago, like it's so new a concept, and how much it took off. And of course, there were extenuating circumstances like the need to be ahead of scanlations. But that doesn't mean that it's changing very rapidly. So I think that something like having a resource like yours, where like, here's some good solid facts that you could know and take with you. Somebody said, Shay says that they don't know any programs where you can get a mentor. And that this workshop has allowed them to learn a ton and meet people like you. So I think basically being a form of mentorship is it's a first step.
Yeah.
You know, it's really valuable. Anybody else have any thoughts?
No, go ahead.
It was just related to the mentoring thing. Sweat, the Society of Writers, Editors, and Translators have just started a mentorship program.
Nice.
I will put the link in the thing. Sorry, carry on.
Excellent.
Nice. I was just gonna say, Erica, one of the things I think is really great about this program is that you bring in a variety of voices, and so everyone gets to hear a lot of different opinions, because translation is an art form, not a science, and that means we all do it differently, even though differently doesn't mean wrong. We could do it differently and both be correct, and I think that's a great opportunity for everyone, as well as seeing all the different aspects like editing, translating. I know you've had letterers in here before.
And Rina will be here next week, and that will be another letterer. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, I think that going off of what Zack said, since we had so many different people who work in different pockets of translation, you really get to see like what, you know, my correct isn't necessarily anyone else's correct, or what the company that I work for, they do it this way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they do it everywhere else like that, right? I try to make that kind of poignant in my presentation, where I'm like, this is how we do it. I don't know how other people do it, if they do it this way, but like this is the way that we do it. So like it's like this workshop has been very good for giving you like a baseline of like how it is in certain parts of the industry. And you know, as long as people know that it's like a guide and not like the definitive, like this is how we do it, like kind of thing. I think that's like the biggest kind of takeaway that people can get from it, because you know, like I said, we have so many different people here,
Yeah, I think teaching people flexibility is a huge important, because
Yeah.
especially if you're involved online with any conversations about translation, you run into this weird inflexibility about things, and not just like it means X means Y,
Right.
but I mean just this idea that there's only one way to do this, so there's
Like
only one
there's
way to be right.
like we say the industry, but the industry is made up of like these like several different, like almost hundreds of different kind of companies, you know.
Teeny little companies.
Oh my
compared
God.
to-
Yeah. And like as someone who has worked for a lot of different companies, every single company is different.
Oh yeah.
Every single one. Yeah.
Even the companies that even in the companies, they do things completely different from department to department. This
Mhm.
media is like that. You can go from one department and they're doing things one way, and you go to the next and there's a
Mhm.
bear on a unicycle juggling flaming.
Right.
Yep. I have-
Even
I have one-
editor to
yeah.
editor.
I mean, even like basic stuff. I have one company where your translation has to be turned in Excel, and another one where it has to be
Oh,
turned in
God.
Word. I mean, there's absolutely no universal standards
That's pretty
at all.
good.
Yeah.
I complain about my company using Excel. Ugh, that's a terrible
I know.
idea. Jennifer, you were going to say something. Jennifer Sherman, you were going to say something.
Oh, what was I gonna say? I mean, but on what David said, even like within the same company, editor to editor can do things completely differently depending on where you're at. But I was also gonna say, I really like that this workshop brings together a good mix of students plus people, you know, early in their careers in the industry. It's just a really good mix of different types of people at different places in their journey, I think. So we can all get different perspectives and, you know, remember different types of things based on what different people are saying. It's like, oh yeah, I don't think about that a lot, but because you are in a different place, you're reminding me of that. Yeah. So
Excellent. Okay, so let's see what else we have. All right, so some of you have attended this or participated a number of times, and some of you are new here. So what would you like to see in the MSU workshop if they're holding it next year? What do you think we could add to it to make it one thing better? This is a game I play at home with food. What can we add to it to make it better? So what do you think you would like to see?
Paprika. No, I'm just kidding.
Pine nuts. The answer is pine nuts.
Yeah. Let's see.
I think more of this.
I think more of just in general, just like this. I don't know, like it doesn't really matter what the topic is. I feel like just having more people share their experiences is the most important takeaway. Even if there is like overlap. I mean, like two people will never do the same thing the same way. So I feel like, you know, just having a lot of people, like you can, you know, we kind of like covered the broad swath of things, like, you know, anime, manga, games, you know, light novels, and you know,
Song translation,
lettering. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe like people who work with like pre-press or, you know, design or something like that. Maybe we can get those kind of guys, or something like that. We you know, I don't think that what you do in this kind of work matters as much as it is your experience, and hearing about your experience might help someone else you know, thrive, because that means that they have an example or a mentor or someone that they can look up to, a role model that they can emulate after, you know. So
right. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts?
I loved getting the questions beforehand because it really helped me shape my presentation. I wasn't going to mention anything in my presentation on how to break into translations until I saw almost every single question was, how do you break into translation? I'm like, I think I'm writing the wrong speech here. I need to, you know, presentation. So I just rewrote it entirely based on those questions that were submitted. So that was incredibly helpful.
Excellent. And Catherine is saying that she loved the breakout rooms. So maybe if we do more participatory stuff. I mean, those are very fraught because some people hated them and some people loved them, you know. And I like when the exercises were in presentation where we were all just sort of chatting rather than specifically necessarily breakout rooms. I kind of like them.
Yeah, I like that too. Having people replying in chat
with
their thoughts.
chat in
and
real
just like
time. Alex also says that they'd love to have more real world examples of
Oh, God.
like haiku speak.
Yeah.
That was great.
I think that was, for me, it seemed like that was one thing that kind of ended up different this year than last year. I feel like last year there were a lot of specific translation examples. And
Yeah.
this year, a lot of people kind of shifted to talking about things a little bit more broadly. So, I think it's kind of nice to oscillate between the two. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one shift was because even though it's a Japanese translation workshop, a lot of people don't know Japanese or they're from
Yeah.
different language pairs.
Yep.
And so I definitely didn't want to make it too Japanese focused so that they also could take something away.
Yeah, same. I when I was forming that whole presentation, like with the haiku speech and the bear heads, whatever. But like when I was doing that whole thing, I was like, oh God, this is gonna go over the heads of so many people if I don't break it down to like its most simple parts. So that's why I didn't make it so like long. I kind of gave you one example. I did a similar presentation where I mentioned that, and I like almost lost the script on everyone when I got at them, and they were just like, well, we didn't know what this word meant. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, yeah, of course you didn't, because I was trying, like, they didn't give me any kind of prompts for anything like that. So this time I kind of learned from that and tried to like make it as simple as possible so that people wouldn't like completely blank out on it. But
Yeah, and it's very hard to balance lots of different needs, and this was a global workshop,
Right.
and open to other language areas as well as the Japanese language group. So,
Right.
and I think that actually is valuable. To be honest, I would say let's start adding other components of other pop cultures and stuff, because I think there's potential here for like a whole paid course, like where people would sign up and like get this sort of as a mentorship. I could see that expanding out very, 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 very well. I mean, I could see it being something MSU makes as a real like certificate offering. There's such a need for it, clearly. And we had so many people every year when we open up registration, it fills like in 2 hours.
Right.
I mean, I think that it's a free service, but I could really see there being potential for expanding it out. I could see more better, that kind of thing. And a number of people are saying they think the chats should be saved. I think the chats are saved on the presentations that are in D2L. So yeah, the transcripts are there. So you can check those chats as well. All right, so I think I have.
Sorry, one more thing.
Oh, please go ahead.
Sorry to jump in. I had a thought while we were talking about this, maybe for next year have a networking session on top of like the roundtable, and then maybe another day have a networking session and having break rooms so that all the participants can like chat to each other in person. That's a little more about their own, like themselves.
And we do have a networking channel on the Discord, and people are welcome to do that anytime. You can put who you are and what you do, and by all means please share that. But I think that's a great idea, and people can practice, and it's a skill, right? It's like the hello, how are you, my name is very hard for a lot of myself in that, and so I know that I have to practice that sort of thing all the time.
Yeah.
So I have one more question for all of you, and I'd like you all to answer this, and this is a bonus question. What's the number one advice you would give folks who want to work in the localization industry? Does anybody want to take that?
Yes, I can go for this one.
Okay.
I'd say be open. And kind of what I mean by that is kind of be open to criticism, be open to learn new things, be open to meet new people, be open to try something different, be open to maybe even, like Zach was saying, explore things besides media translation, just be open to everything and see where it takes you.
Very, very nice. Kevin?
I would say try to specialize. It's a very, I don't want to say it's like a super competitive field, but a lot of people want to get into kind of a localization of media. So it's very good to try and develop specific skills, kind of make yourself stand out to clients.
That's excellent. Excellent.
I would go off of that as well and say specialize in a lot of things. You can
Yes.
specialize in a whole bunch of things. Like
Specialized generally.
yeah, specialize generally.
Buzzwords, but
General-
actually, yeah.
But what
So
I mean,
so we have
what's that?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so that means we're saying be open but also specialized, but be open to like specialize in a lot of
Be
things.
open but closed. Be
Yeah,
shallow, but
closed.
large.
Like
open
Japan,
closed.
open-
Learn everything, but in a special way.
So actionable.
Yeah, just don't even
I'm gonna
listen
write
to
my
us.
bio. I'm a general specialist.
Yeah,
Well, the
Be
thing
it-
about specialization is it comes with time too.
yeah,
Right.
Like even in my day job, I had to learn a whole new project, right? And as I'm doing it, I'm like, hey, you know, I can't figure out any of this part, but I'm really, really good at this part because
Right.
this is
Mhm.
where my skill set is. And it took me like 3 months to figure out that if somebody else handles that, I am great on this.
right.
But
Like,
I hadn't realized because it was a whole new process.
Like I have like all of my interests tend to come out in the work that I take or the work that I do. Like I'm really into combat sports, like boxing, MMA, karate, all that stuff. And now I'm working on like 2 karate manga, and like
Nice.
I'm in Candyland. I'm like Homer in the land of chocolate and stuff. So like if you have interests, kind of like build upon those things and try to find if you can apply them to your work, because sometimes you'll find out that a lot of the things that you just think are tertiary knowledge or stuff that you think are like Snapple facts, like stuff that you'll never ever use in your life, will come up in manga because the people that
It will come up in manga.
it'll come up
Yeah.
it'll come up in anything, because these people that are writing these stories have esoteric junk knowledge in their head too. So
Yeah.
like
Mm.
just have to kind of roll the bones. Like when I'm translating Undead Unluck, me and the manga author are almost like the same age and have the same interests. So
Right.
like I'm always finding stuff where I'm like, hey, that's the thing that I know that I like.
Right.
You what? Huh? So like you have to be broad, but also apply your interests in the things that into things that you like, and you'll find some modicum of success from that, I feel like.
I think also bouncing off of that, I think write about your interests. Like
Yeah.
My spouse is really into Gundam and card games, and he knows loads of really sports like racing and baseball. And I'm like, write about this stuff, write that about this stuff, write about the interesting linguistic difference between English and Japanese, because then it shows people that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. And it like, even if it doesn't lead to anything, I mean, that's one reason why my website is great, is because I can be like, well, actually, I don't know that much, but I can be like, I know my stuff. Like, I'm somebody who's hopefully that you want to work on something. And so it's a show of what you know as well.
Right.
So my advice would be a little more impractical, and depending on where you are on your skill level, but move to Japan, live there for a couple years. Almost everyone that works in the manga industry has at least lived in Japan for quite some time. I think it gives you the ability to practice the language on a practical level instead of a textbook level. And I think it just really helps you so much more as a translator to just live in the environment and speak in the environment every single day. I think there are exceptions, of course. There are really good translators out there that have never lived in Japan, but they are, they're the exceptions. The rest of us, one of the biggest leg ups you can ever give yourself as a professional translator is to figure out a way to go live in Japan for 3 years minimum, I would say. And it seems like a pretty big commitment, but it's definitely something that will pay off immense dividends.
It's true.
I think I'm the only person on the localization department at Capcom who was not a jet. Everybody has been a jet.
Yep.
or a teacher of some kind, because it gave them that
I mean, it's a great leg into the knowing what you're talking about.
Right.
And not being, someone like me who goes once or twice a year and goes, yes, I'm an expert. It's not the same thing. Living somewhere gives you a total insight into the culture. And I think that's true for everyone.
Yeah. And it also gives you credentials when it comes time to apply for your first translation job. You can be like, oh yeah, I lived in Japan for 4 years. And then now I'm ready to take you seriously because I know that from the back part, which if someone tells me that they lived in Japan for 3 years versus someone says they have a bachelor's in Japanese, I would default to the person who lived in Japan. Their Japanese is probably better than the one that has the bachelor's in Japanese.
As long as it was current. I mean, I think that,
Yeah.
I lived in Japan for 3 years, 25 years ago.
25 years. Yes,
1974.
absolutely, yes.
I mean, because every time we say anything, I always want to say, there's always that, it's not even an edge case, who you are, where you were, you can be learning, you could have never gone to Japan and be learning currently, like, I'm fascinated by slang, just generally, I love language. So, I'm always paying attention to how people are saying stuff, and just reading tons of manga, you can watch how kanji use changes and slang changes, and you can do that and not necessarily have done that even if you lived in Japan, because if you weren't paying attention to how language works,
Right.
there's that too. So it's always good to remember that everything is and also there's other ways to do that too. It's always that.
Yep.
So Renell has one question, and we have like 3 minutes left. So if anybody wants to take this, I know it's not the same. Where would you suggest getting speaking experience, perhaps with groups online, if you can't go to Japan?
Marry a Japanese person. Yay!
Yeah.
Twitter.
There's like a few apps. I cannot remember the name of them though.
So there's one called iTalki.
Yeah, there we go.
iTalki.
iTalki.
It's
Yeah.
literally iTalki. And I have used it. I found myself a tutor, and I had to stop this winter because things are crazy, but really, really terrific site. And you can kind of pick what you want to spend your money on and who and what you want to talk about.
And also there's like a friend of mine, she has online lessons that you can take, and like you can get lessons with like actual Japanese people to like teach you and stuff like that. And there's also, I don't know if it was still around, but when I was like, this is like 10 years ago, is it still around, called Mixer, I think it was called, not the blog Mixi, but Mixer. Yeah. It was like a place where you could like exchange Skype stuff, and I think they might have closed down because people are using it for online dating, but there's stuff like that. Yeah.
Anything online will eventually be used for online dating, I assume. But
LinkedIn is used for online dating. So,
yeah.
No.
It's a terrifying
I know,
thought.
I like that.
Jen, I think didn't you publish that list of podcasts? That was you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember. Yeah, you published with some podcasts. I bookmarked every single one, and I think that they're tremendously great and fun to listen to. So
in the chat right now,
That's good.
Yeah.
in the chat right now, Hannah also put a link for a blog about how to put together a Japanese discussion group. So you can grab that too.
Oh, nice.
Some people have saying Twitch. I'm saying Twitter. I literally reach out to people on Twitter and just randomly talk to them in my terrible Japanese, and they talk back to me, sometimes in Japanese and sometimes in English, and it's actually kind of fun. I actually prefer that, where I can use my terrible Japanese and they can practice their English with me, and that works really well. I mean, it's good for both of us. So
yeah. And I post my terrible English and terrible Japanese in both languages, all messed up.
Exactly. I think we're at the top of the hour here, but I want to say thank you all so much for the incredible presentations and for you taking your time, your knowledge, and your camaraderie and your mentorship, because I learn something every time all of you speak, and I'm sure that that everybody who is part of this workshop feels the same way. So thank you again, and I very much hope to see you again next year.